So, a lot of buyers of real estate think that if they have an inspection contingency and a loan contingency, these are essentially fail-safe outs to get you out of a contract if you want to cancel. Now, the truth of the matter is that due to certain things like good faith and specific performance, even if you have contingencies in place as a buyer, you may not be able to unilaterally get out of a contract. So, in this next video, I speak with a prominent real estate attorney on how, as a buyer, you can get out of a contract with contingencies in good faith and not risk losing your earnest money deposit. Okay, everybody, I am back. He is back due to popular demand. Real estate attorney John Gutierrez. Everybody loved the video that we did about rent control a couple of weeks ago, and our inbox has been flooded with requests for him to return and share his legal advice and expertise with us in hypothetical situations. And today we're going to talk about how buyers can use contingencies in their contract to get out of a deal and not have it be construed as bad faith. Now, just before we go any deeper, this is going to be purely hypothetical situations. Do not take anything that either John or I say in this video as a statement of fact or a legal truth. Every situation is specific, and we're mainly just talking about general situations that buyers of all types of properties should be aware of before they sign a contract to purchase a piece of real estate. So, John, I don't think you need another introduction. Everybody already knows you. Your video blew up. John is a prominent real estate attorney based in Berkeley, and he does a handful of issues from real estate litigation, rent control, landlord, tenant, CC&Rs, you name it, he does it. Let's just get started. So the first thing that I want to go over is the inspection contingency. So a lot of people that I work with think that just because, if I'm a buyer on a piece of property and I have an inspection contingency, shouldn't that give me a free out if I, want to cancel before I remove it?
Good question. I'm going to use a phrase I used last time. This may become my catchphrase. Nothing could be further from the truth. What you just said. The contingency is a way, and there are a variety of contingencies, inspections, financing, any other contingencies that a buyer might come up with. They are ways for a buyer to proceed cautiously in a transaction and either confirm that the property is what they want or discover for good reasons that maybe this isn't the property that they thought they were getting. There's an underlying premise in any contractual relationship, whether we're talking about real estate or buying an automobile or anything else, and that is that the parties will act in good faith with each other. And good faith in this context means that if and when you finish your inspection or you get communication from a lender about a loan that you've applied for, if you decide to back out, you need to be sure that you're acting in good faith and that there is a reasonable and objective reason, fairly objective reason, why you're getting out. It's not simply because I changed my mind or my shoes were too tight, or I had an argument with somebody this morning and I don't want to do this. It has to be predicated on a good reason. The significance of that is a seller who believes that you're not acting in good faith can say, okay, you're not going to buy the property, but I'm not going to release your deposit because I don't believe that you're acting in good faith. And then there can be this protracted and prolonged and expensive process of trying to get out of the transaction cleanly with most, if not all, of your deposit.
So what would be an example of breaking a contract in bad faith? And what would the process sort of be like? So for example, if I'm a buyer and I have a home inspection and I realize that there's, a faulty water heater, or something, and I don't want to deal with that. Do I have to give the seller the opportunity to remedy that? Or, I mean, or can I just use that as a, catch-all, I want out?
The short answer is no, you don't necessarily have to give the seller the opportunity to remedy that. But again, to go back to what I said, if the seller is suspicious, or if you express the particular reason for getting out of this contract as simply, I stubbed my toe, there was a dent in the water heater, a seller is going to interpret that as you're just kind of making this up. I don't think that's a good enough reason why you'd walk away from a transaction like this, especially if it's a small little dent or ding. What you're looking for is something more substantial, like discovering that the foundation of the property is actually made out of graham crackers with marshmallow on the inside, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for something substantial, substantive. And similarly with financing, there have got to be good financial reasons, specifically that the loan that you thought you were applying for is significantly different than what a lender is telling you that they would agree to lend you on.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on right now is sort of the second question that I wanted to address, is that, oftentimes for buyers, a lot of buyers may not be aware that you can be very specific within the contract as to, what type of loan you will purchase this property with. And a lot of buyers may not read the entire section that allows the agent, with the buyer together, to actually state the terms of the loan that the buyer is expecting to get going into this purchase. And if it's left blank, such as you don't put in your maximum interest rate, etc., I mean, it seems like the buyer can be, if the seller really wants to push the issue, could they force the buyer to close with a loan that they don't really want to close with? Or
again, good question. And let me take one step back and say the situation that we're talking about where there's friction with the seller typically arises when the market is flat or declining. Because otherwise, if the market is rising and you say, I don't want to buy this property, chances are there are 1 or 3 or 5 or 10 people behind you who do want to buy the property and maybe even pay more than what you offer, right? So the situation is really one where things are uncertain. And right now, Tommy, I'll let you speak to that issue as to whether we're back on solid ground or whether we're still kind of fluctuating. The short answer is that a seller might, at least hypothetically, have the ability to force you to buy the property. That involves a lawsuit for what is called specific performance. The reality is, however, that most transactions that the buyer doesn't want to follow through on get resolved by the buyer and the seller agreeing to split the buyer's deposit somehow. Because otherwise, as I said, it becomes this protracted process of you hire an attorney, the seller has an attorney, God forbid it goes into litigation. And so usually it comes down to, can the seller find an equal or better replacement buyer, and how quickly, and how much more time and cost are they going to have to sink into the property? Mm-hmm. And how much are you, the buyer, willing to relinquish of your deposit?
So it sounds like, in summary, since we're almost at our 10-minute mark here. So in summary, if you are a buyer, you need to be extremely careful with the reason that you give for canceling a contract, even if you still have a contingency in place. Because just because you have a contingency in place still means that you need to act in good faith and carry on like you did when you wrote the offer, and express that your intention was to purchase this property, but some unforeseen reasonable circumstance, came up that is preventing you from doing so. And furthermore, with the loan contingency, you need to be prudent as to the actual terms of the loan that you put into the deal, because we all know that interest rates, down payment requirements, etc., are fluctuating, especially in these last few months due to COVID. And just because the terms that you may have gone into with your lender when you wrote the contract may have changed halfway through the deal, that still may not mean that you can get out of the deal unless you specifically put the terms of your loan into the contract. So,
and by that we mean, look, you're in good hands if Tommy is your agent. If you're working with other agents, you need to have a conversation with your agent about how they are preparing the offer. And what we're talking about specifically here is the difference between having a contract that simply says, I have a contingency for getting a loan in the amount of X,
yeah,
which is how most contracts are written, versus I have a contingency for getting a loan in the amount of X on Y interest rate and Z points. Because if all you're saying is, I'm getting a loan of X and the lender says, sure, I'll give you a loan of X, but here are the interest rate and the points you're going to pay, a seller might be able to hold your feet to the fire and say, all you reserved was the right to get that loan. The lender said they'd give you that loan. It's too bad you don't like the interest rate. So you should specify the interest rate, you should specify points, and any other details about that loan that are important to you. So on that note, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you the next time, possibly with a haircut done. And
yes, hopefully we can get some haircuts before the next time. But thank you, very juicy details, and we're signing off, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, stay safe. All right.